Did you know that according to Process Maker, a typical office worker spends almost 2.5 hours in business communications or email applications like Outlook, over 11.5 hours each week searching and organizing files in SharePoint, and 11.5 hours copying and pasting or manually entering data into a CRM. Madness. But this year, all of that changed. Amongst the benchmark wars and the almost endless state-of-the-art model releases, a quiet revolution has been taking place. So in this video, we're going to do something different. We're going to explore 5 enterprise use cases for AI at work that were not possible 1 year ago, and they may just make your life that little bit easier. Number 1, we're going to start with creating pitch decks with Nano Banana. Now, if you work at a company as a team leader, you need to lead workshops on all kinds of topics and you need to motivate your team. So you're often putting together slides, but this process, as you know, can take forever. Now, for a long time, Gamma AI was actually the market leader, and the presentations it produced were okay, and probably reasonable if you needed to present something quickly, but you would need to hand this over to a designer to tidy it up. And at the start of the year, we also had the image generator from OpenAI, but both of these were time consuming. Gamma requires a lot of tidy up, and OpenAI's image generator really only lets you generate the slides one by one. So the reality was, AI was not quite there yet. But since the release of Nano Banana, and now we've also got Nano Banana Pro, we can actually produce something that rivals what a junior designer would put together. So let's have a go at building something ourselves. So we're going to start in a perhaps unusual, unexpected place. We're going to go to Notebook LLM. Well, why Notebook LLM? Well, Notebook LLM, because it's part of the Google Suite, has Nano Banana built into it. And so what we can do is we can create some assets and then we can tell it to turn these into a presentation, and it will go ahead and use Nano Banana. So if we create a new notebook, you can see it gives us some files here, so we can actually put in the Gcore website, which is www.gcore.com. We will insert that, and then for good measure as well, we might as well give it the Gcore logo. So we will open this. Now, Gcore logo, you can see the new one has 2 G's in it, so we need to remember that, not 1 G. So we'll save the image, upload this as a source as well. Now what we need to do is we need to give it obviously something to actually turn into a presentation. So why don't I go ahead and give it this week's AI news video, or an AI news video from the past, and see what it does. So we'll take last week's AI news video, I think, from the 5th of December. So this was the one where we talked about DeepSeek version 3.2. So we will select all of it and then we will copy. You can even copy it as Markdown, which is a nice touch. Nano Banana seems to like Markdown, so we can press copy text, paste it here, and insert. Then what we'll do is we will select create me a slide deck, and we will see what it does. And you see we've got infographic, flashcards, quiz, so we could even create a flashcard from this. So if we wanted to memorize all of the benchmarks for DeepSeek version 3.2, we could do that. So let's create a slide deck and let's see what it does. So we can see it's generating it, and it's based on 3 sources, so it generally takes a while. Remember, Nano Banana Pro, which is probably what it's using in the back end, is pretty heavy and pretty intensive, so we need to see, it's going to take some time. The other thing you can also do, by the way, is you could also type as well, so we could actually say to it exactly what we wanted the deck to look like. In this case, we kind of left it up to the model to decide how to present this information, but it will be really interesting to see what it comes back with. So then, as we can see, Notebook LLM has finished its job. Let's take a look at the presentation that it's done and see how good a job it's done. Expand the viewer. The AI playbook is obsolete. A fundamental shift in the landscape of open and closed models demands a new infrastructure strategy. You can see it's amazing. It's got the Gcore logo in. It's got our orange and black. Now, of course, the only thing is, of course, that black text is bleeding here, and we've got this little random... no, that was my cursor, my bad, little box here. So wow, for the past 2 years, the performance gap was widening. The prevailing narrative was that open source models would inevitably catch up. However, the launches of GPT-5 and Gemini 3 in 2025 challenged this assumption, creating a significant performance deficit. So this is really cool. So imagine that I wanted to present last week's video in a presentation format. Imagine maybe I had a live audience and I wanted to talk about open source and closed source and really the difference that version 3.2 is making. This really changes the format very, very easily. We don't have to rewrite it. And we've got a little graph here, of course, to talk about, which is really, really cool. It's created a difficult choice for enterprise AI. So we've got the 2 options. Look at that. So from me speaking about different options, it's put a grid. We've got another graph, so many different graphs. It really, really is smart, I think. And it's put the benchmarks in here. It's made this itself. It hasn't gone away, obviously, and found the benchmarks. It's made these graphics itself. The advantage isn't just scale, it's architectural efficiency. Oh, wow. And this is so cool. We have to have a look at this. Look at this. It's actually mapped out the standard attention mechanism and how it works. I think that is pretty accurate as to how the attention mechanism works and all the relationships. And then it's talked about how the DeepSeek sparse attention mechanism could work. That is super, super cool. So this is really, really amazing. So this is such a game changer. This is so beautiful, of course. G-Core, introducing G-Core, the infrastructure for the new playbook. So if I was going around, of course, selling some of our services to new products, this is amazing. We've got a GPU logo there, talks about what it does, manage Kubernetes, global network, and all in our orange and black colors as well. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So it's talking through some of the clients. These are some quotes from Higgsfield AI and Leonardo AI, some of G-Core's clients. G-Core playbook in action, compliance of winning AI infrastructure. And look at this, even a map. Look at how complicated this would be to get an AI bot to make. Remember, you know, even 18 months ago, you said to one of these image generators, make me a map. It would make a complete mess of it, and it couldn't even do proper text. It was kind of like Roman numerals. So wow, this is completely blown me away, and I think that this is one of the amazing things about AI technology, is that none of this would have been possible even a few months ago, and now that it is. So yeah, amazing job. Well done, Notebook LLM. Now, one question we need answering is, could you do this open source? Well, technically, yes. Though obviously not with Nano Banana, but you could use Flux, for example, Flux Dev, which is open source, and spin it up on your own server and then string all the images it produces together. Now, number 2, human resources. Now, one of the cool things about work in 2025 is, of course, remote working. So today, lots of businesses have employees working remotely in many different jurisdictions. I think it's amazing, and it can provide so much benefit to a company: diversity of thought, experience and opinion, and to the employee, networking and collaboration opportunities outside of the usual city, and a chance to get a better work-life balance. And of course, G-Core is no exception, but it can also bring with it massive compliance headaches for HR. It means every employee has different rights regarding sick pay, the number of holidays they are entitled to, and also tax. UK, for example, where I'm from, had 2 additional holidays in 2022 for the Platinum Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II, and then for her funeral when she sadly passed away in September. The advances in context windows we've seen this year and the rollout of MCP have meant we can now build an in-house solution to help HR keep track of this, a database with all of this information in it in a connected chatbot. Now, naturally, some of this is going to be sensitive data, who works what and where they work, and so obviously it needs to be kept under lock and key. You can't just give this information to ChatGPT. Now, a reasoning model is perfect for this job because we need high-level analysis to consider the scenario we give it and who is in what country. And that really wasn't an option with open source until the summer and the all-important release of GPT-OSS. Now, of course, you could have relied on DeepSeek, but here is how we might roll something like this out. So we want to spin up a bare metal server or a virtual machine on G-Core and be GPTR compliant with Europe by selecting a European data center. Then we'd want to install GPT-OSS, the 120 billion parameter model. Olama is a great option to get that spin up. And you're probably going to want a database with ChromaDB or Neo4j if you want that extra control. And then it's about orchestration. So this is about using NAN perhaps as an option, or coding your solution, then chunking up your company personal doc with the regulations from that country. Then you'd hook it all up to a front end and you deploy it, and there you go. HR would have a chatbot that they can consult, asking it to cite its sources, of course, every time they have a question about who has what benefits, who is in what jurisdiction, and who needs what holiday. Now, you can check out the video walkthrough we did on how to build a compliant legal chatbot with RAG and a database. It is fairly similar and it follows the same pattern that we chunk up documents with RAG into a database and run an open source model like GPT-OSS. Third, what about spinning up an internal intranet. Now, a lot of large enterprises struggle with how to onboard and communicate regularly to their employees. Most tend to start out with an out-the-box solution, something like Notion, which acts as a portal or an intranet. And we've seen all kinds of advances here in this space. First of all, Notion launched an AI agent, so you can literally give it the data you want and ask it to spin up the Notion databases for you with the model of your choice. But I would also say that anti-gravity has really changed the game here as well when it comes to website and design. This means you could even design your own internal intranet exactly how you'd like it in a few hours. I think anti-gravity actually does a better job than Lovable in a lot of cases. But anti-gravity really has taken things to the next level when it comes to web design. You can feed it brand colors, schemes, logos, tell it the exact features you want, and where it's missing some key resources, it can go away and use Nano Banana or even Nano Banana Pro to fill those gaps. It's again that Google ecosystem play. Now, what about getting to inbox zero? I'd say that this is one of the biggest challenges of working in a large organization. And this is really the first year when AI tools with email have really taken off. It is actually possible now to get control of your work email and make sure that everybody gets a response, and making sure your team is fully enabled to handle those emails so they're not spending 3 hours a day. If you work in a massive organization with over 1,000 employees, you really can be dealing with a lot of traffic. Zoe Kleiman, who's the technology editor at the BBC, wrote a post this year about the challenges of managing over 4,000 unread emails. Now, our solution before was pretty complex, but now we have Superhuman AI and Notion, which put out a mail client which can do auto categorization with AI and plug into your mail. Plus, Google have also added Gemini AI responses and drafts to their professional mailboxes, so it's ready to go off the bat. Now, number 5 then, finally, if there's one thing a lot of people dread and one thing AI has been historically bad at, it's, guess what, dealing with documents. Going back to those stats from Process Maker, a typical office worker spends 3 hours working on spreadsheets weekly. For example, Excel, Google Sheets. Second half of 2025, I think, is when things have really started to get easier and we've really started to see momentum. First of all, we had Anthropic lead the way in September by launching a file creation and analysis tool. And that builds on the work they did with the MCP, which makes tool calling much easier for LLMs. Repetition and administration is still a big deal in most offices, but gradually this burden is being lifted by AI tools. GPT 5.2, which came out last week in response to Gemini 3, so-called code red emergency, according to some reports, has also advanced this further. See Professor Ethan Mollick's post. He asked GPT 5.2 to create an Excel spreadsheet for a Dungeons and Dragon types game. Now, of course, your work is not going to be quite as exciting as that, but it's a good point that spreadsheets are now working with a lot of AI tools. So there you have it. The big question I want you to consider this week is what, if anything, has changed in your role? And how do you see your role changing thanks to these new tools in the next year? Comment below, always keen to hear, and I will see you next week for a very festive edition.